The door slammed so hard the walls shook. Daniel didn't flinch, but his hand tightened around the cheap paper cup he was holding, the bitter coffee inside spilling over his fingers and dripping onto the cracked linoleum floor. The woman standing in front of him, heels planted, arms crossed, eyes sharp with disappointment, didn't even notice. "I can't do this anymore," Sofia said, her voice trembling, not with sadness, but with anger she had been holding back for weeks. "I'm tired of pretending this is enough." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, as she paced the tiny apartment like a caged animal. The peeling paint, the humming refrigerator, the single flickering bulb overhead. This place had been part of the lie from the beginning. And now it was collapsing. "You said you loved me," he said quietly. Sofia let out a bitter laugh. "Love doesn't pay rent, Daniel. Love doesn't buy futures." The words hit harder than the door had. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed in his pocket. One short message appeared on the cracked screen. "She's here." Daniel swallowed. Across the city, another woman was waiting for him, unaware that her life, and his, were about to change forever. And neither of them knew that in less than 24 hours, the truth would destroy everything. 3 months earlier, Daniel had stood in the center of a glass-walled boardroom 40 floors above the city, listening as men twice his age argued over numbers that most people would never see in a lifetime. His name was engraved on the building. His signature decided the fate of thousands of employees. His net worth was whispered about in financial magazines like a myth. But no one in that room knew what kept him awake at night. When the meeting ended, applause followed him out. Respect, fear, admiration. He smiled, nodded, played the part. As soon as the elevator doors closed, his smile vanished. He had been rich since he was 24. He had been alone since he was 25. Every relationship followed the same pattern. At first they loved his ambition. Then they discovered his lifestyle. Then came the entitlement, the expectations, the subtle shift from affection to ownership. And when he tried to pull back, to see who would stay without the private jets, the penthouses, the endless gifts, they never did. So he stopped telling the truth. The idea came to him one night while staring at the city from his penthouse balcony. If money was the problem, then money would disappear. Not forever. Just long enough to see who stayed. He created a new version of himself. Not a lie about who he was, but a lie about what he had. Daniel moved out of the penthouse and into a rundown apartment on the edge of the city. He bought secondhand clothes. Took a job under a false name at one of his own subsidiary companies, working entry-level, clocking in and out like everyone else. The first rule he set for himself was simple: never lie about his values. Only about his bank account. That was when he met Sofia. She worked in marketing, ambitious, stunning, the kind of woman who turned heads when she entered a room. They met at a small bar near his apartment, one of the few places he could afford to go without pretending too hard. At first, Sofia liked his simplicity. She called him refreshing. Said she admired how grounded he was. Daniel watched her closely, waiting for the moment things changed. And slowly they did. It started small. Complaints about the neighborhood. Jokes about his car. Casual remarks about how men should provide. Every comment landed softly, but together they formed a weight he felt every day. Then 2 weeks after meeting Sofia, he met Maya. She spilled coffee on his shoes while rushing out of a bookstore, apologizing so profusely she looked like she might cry. Daniel laughed it off, and instead of getting angry, she insisted on buying him another coffee. They talked for an hour. Then 2. Maya didn't ask what he did for a living. She asked what he cared about. With Sofia, Daniel felt evaluated. With Maya he felt seen. But he didn't stop seeing Sofia. That was his second mistake. Sofia noticed the strain first. The way Daniel hesitated before paying. The way he flinched when bills came up. One night, at dinner, she set her fork down and stared at him. "Where is this going?" she asked. Daniel met her gaze. "I'm trying." Sofia shook her head. Trying isn't enough forever. With Maya the conversations were different. When Daniel told her he was worried about money, she didn't judge him. She smiled gently and said, "We'll figure it out." When he failed an interview, one he intentionally sabotaged, she hugged him like it didn't matter. And that scared him more than Sofia's disappointment ever had. Because Maya didn't love potential. She loved presence. Weeks passed and Daniel felt the lie tightening around him. He hated himself for testing people like this, hated that he was turning love into an experiment. But he couldn't stop. Not yet. Then came the night Sofia exploded. "I'm embarrassed, Daniel," she said, pacing the apartment. "My friends ask what you do and I don't know what to say anymore." "You could say I'm honest," he replied. She turned sharply. Honest about what? That you're stuck. That was when his phone buzzed. She's here. Maya was downstairs, waiting to walk with him like they always did on Thursdays. She didn't know Sofia existed. Sofia didn't know Maya did either. And standing there, coffee dripping from his hand, Daniel realized the test was no longer about them. It was about him. And whatever choice he made next would cost him something he could never buy back. Daniel locked the apartment door behind him and followed Maya down the narrow staircase, the sound of Sofia's words still ringing in his ears. The night air was cold, but Maya didn't seem to notice. She walked slowly, hands tucked into her jacket sleeves, kicking at a loose stone on the sidewalk. "You okay?" she asked, glancing at him. "Yeah," he lied. "Just tired." She smiled, that soft smile that never asked for more than he could give. "Long week." Something like that. They walked in silence for a moment. Cars passed. Laughter drifted from a nearby restaurant. Daniel felt like he was living two separate lives stitched together by deception, and the seams were starting to rip. Maya stopped at a crosswalk. "You know," she said casually, "you don't always have to be strong." Daniel looked at her. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "You carry things like you think you're not allowed to put them down." The words landed deeper than she knew. He wanted to tell her everything right then. The buildings, the money, the lie. But fear held him back. Not fear of being exposed, but fear of what her eyes would look like afterward. Across town, Sofia sat alone on Daniel's couch, scrolling through her phone angrily. She replayed the argument in her head, convincing herself she was right. She had been patient. She had lowered her standards. She had stayed longer than she should have. Her phone buzzed. "Are you still with him?" Her friend texted. Sofia hesitated, then typed back, "I don't know for how much longer." The next morning, Daniel woke up before his alarm. The ceiling above him was stained, a small crack running through the plaster like a fault line. He stared at it, thinking about how easy it would be to make all of this stop. One phone call. One reveal. One apology. Instead, he got dressed and went to work. At the office, he sat at a desk no one paid attention to, answering emails no one cared about. It was his company. His systems. His money. And yet he had never felt smaller. During lunch, his phone buzzed again. "Sofia, we need to talk tonight." A minute later, another message appeared. "Maya, I made soup. Thought you might need it." Daniel closed his eyes. That evening, Sofia arrived dressed impeccably, hair perfect, makeup flawless, as if preparing for battle. She didn't sit. She stood in the middle of the apartment, arms crossed. "I've been thinking," she said. "This isn't working." Daniel nodded slowly. "Okay." Her eyes narrowed. "That's it? No fight? No begging?" He looked at her. "What do you want me to say?" She scoffed. "I want you to want more. I want you to want better." "I do," he said quietly. "Then prove it." "How?" She hesitated, then said it. "I can't be with someone who can't give me stability." The word hung between them like a verdict. Daniel felt something inside him break, not because she said it but because part of him had expected it. "I understand," he said. Sofia blinked, caught off guard. "You do?" "Yes." For a moment she looked almost disappointed. "You're really okay with this?" she asked. "I don't have a choice." She grabbed her purse. "I hope you figure your life out, Daniel." As the door closed behind her, Daniel sank onto the couch, his hands shaking. He had just lost someone, and he wasn't sure if it was because of the lie, or because of the truth underneath it. That night he went to Maya's place. She opened the door wearing old sweatpants and a sweater too big for her. Her hair was tied up messily. She smiled when she saw him. "You look exhausted," she said, pulling him inside. She handed him a bowl of soup and sat across from him, watching quietly as he ate. "Something bad happened," she said gently. Daniel's throat tightened. "How do you know?" "You're quieter than usual." He stared at the bowl. What if you loved someone and then found out they weren't who you thought they were?" Maya thought for a moment. "Depends. Did they lie about who they are or just about what they have?" Daniel's heart pounded. "I don't know," he said. She leaned forward. "Why?" He met her eyes. "Would it matter to you?" Maya didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I think intent matters more than facts." That night, Daniel didn't sleep. Days passed. Sofia stopped calling. Maya stayed. But something changed. Sofia began texting again, subtle at first. Casual check-ins. Mentions of missing him. Then one afternoon she sent a message that made Daniel's stomach drop. "I met someone today. He asked me out." Daniel stared at the screen. "I thought you should know," she added. He He didn't reply. That same night, Maya told him she'd been offered a job in another city. Temporary. 6 months. I haven't decided, she said. I don't want to leave if... If what? Daniel asked. If it would change things. Change things. And things. Save things. That was when Daniel knew the test had gone too far. He invited both women to the same event. A corporate gala. Black tie. Downtown. Sofia was thrilled by the invitation. Maya was confused but agreed, trusting him. Neither knew the truth. Neither knew about the other. And Daniel stood alone in his apartment afterward, staring at his reflection, whispering, "What have I done?" Because in less than a week, the lie would end. And so would everything else. The days leading up to the gala moved slowly, like time itself was resisting what was coming. Daniel went through the motions of his routine, work, the apartment, the streets he had memorized, but everything felt distant, unreal. Every conversation felt like it might be the last version of itself. Sofia texted more often now. Not aggressively. Strategically. What should I wear? This place looks fancy. Funny how things change, right? Daniel answered politely, minimally. Each message tightened the knot in his chest. He could feel her leaning back toward him, curiosity replacing disappointment. The invitation had changed something. He wondered if she sensed it or if she was simply responding to the promise of something bigger. With Maya, things felt heavier. They spent more time together, but the closeness came with a fragile silence, like both of them were standing on thin ice, afraid to move too suddenly. One evening they sat on the floor of her apartment, backs against the couch, sharing cheap takeout. "Do you ever feel like something's about to end?" Maya asked suddenly. Daniel froze. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," she said softly. "Like, when everything feels important all at once." He swallowed. "Sometimes." She turned to him. "If something was wrong, you'd tell me, right?" He looked at her, at the trust in her eyes, and felt the weight of his choices crush down on him. "I want to," he said. Maya smiled faintly. "That's not the same thing." The night of the gala arrived faster than Daniel expected. The city shimmered under a blanket of lights as black cars lined the entrance of the venue. Inside, crystal chandeliers reflected off polished floors, and the air buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and unspoken power. Daniel arrived first. He stood in a private room upstairs, adjusting the cufflinks on a suit that cost more than his entire fake life combined. He barely recognized himself in the mirror. The confidence was familiar. The ease. The authority. But behind it was fear. Sofia arrived 20 minutes later. She stepped out of her car wearing a sleek black dress, eyes widening as she took in the building. Her expression shifted. Surprise, admiration, excitement. She spotted Daniel and her smile bloomed instantly. "Wow," she said, approaching him. "You look different." "So do you," he replied. She laughed lightly, touching his arm. "I had no idea you moved in these circles." He didn't correct her. Moments later, Maya arrived. She hesitated at the entrance, clearly uncomfortable, dressed simply but elegantly as if unsure she belonged. When she saw Daniel, relief washed over her face. "Hey," she said, walking toward him. Sofia's hand was still on his arm. The air shifted. Daniel felt it, the collision of worlds, the moment everything stopped pretending. Sofia looked at Maya. Maya looked at Sofia. Then both looked at Daniel. "Oh," Sofia said slowly. "Friend of yours?" Maya's brow furrowed. "I was about to ask the same thing." Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Before he could speak, an announcer's voice echoed through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. We'll be beginning shortly." Daniel exhaled sharply. "Please. Both of you. Just give me a few minutes." Sofia studied him, suspicion flickering behind her smile. "You're acting strange." Maya said nothing. She nodded once. They took separate seats. Daniel stepped onto the stage. The room quieted. He looked out at the crowd, investors, executives, people who knew his name, his worth, his power. He spotted Sofia near the front, eyes shining. Then Maya, further back, watching him with quiet concern. The host handed him the microphone. "For those of you who don't know me," Daniel began, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "My name is Daniel Carter." Polite applause followed. "I founded this company 12 years ago with nothing but an idea and a lot of mistakes." The room laughed softly. Daniel continued, "Tonight isn't about celebrating success. It's about honesty." Sofia leaned forward. Maya's hands tightened in her lap. "For the past several months," Daniel said, "I've been living a lie." A ripple moved through the audience. I wanted to know who I was without money. Who people loved when I had nothing to offer but myself. Silence. Daniel took a breath. Some of you here have known me for years. Others have known a very different version of me. Sofia's smile faltered. Maya's eyes widened. I pretended to be poor, Daniel said. Not because I was ashamed of my success, but because I was tired of being loved for it. A murmur spread across the room. Sofia stood abruptly. What is this? She whispered. Daniel looked directly at her. The truth. Her face flushed. You lied to me. Yes, he said. She laughed sharply. So this was some kind of test? Daniel hesitated. It became one. Maya stood slowly. Daniel, she said, her voice trembling but controlled. Is this real? He met her gaze. Yes. Tears welled in her eyes. So every time you said you couldn't afford something? I could, he said. She nodded slowly, absorbing the blow. And you let me. I never asked you to sacrifice, he said quickly. But you let me, she replied quietly. Sofia stepped closer, anger blazing. Unbelievable. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Daniel turned to her. I watched how you treated me when you thought I had nothing. And now, she snapped. Now you expect what? Gratitude. He shook his head. I expect honesty. Sofia's tone shifted suddenly, her voice softer. Daniel, if I had known? That's the point, he interrupted. Maya took a step back. I need air, she said. She turned and walked toward the exit. Daniel moved instinctively to follow her. Sofia grabbed his arm. Don't you dare walk away from me. Daniel pulled free. And in that moment he knew. No matter what happened next, someone was going to leave his life forever. Daniel followed Maya out of the hall, his footsteps echoing too loudly in the marble corridor. Guests whispered behind him, curiosity ignited, but he didn't care anymore. The experiment had exploded in his hands, and all that mattered now was the woman walking away without looking back. Maya, wait. She stopped near the exit, her back to him, shoulders tense. For a moment he thought she might keep walking. Then she turned slowly. How long? She asked. He blinked. How long what? How long were you rich while pretending to be broke with me? Her voice didn't shake. That was worse. Since before we met, he admitted. Maya let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. So every memory, every conversation, was built on something false. No, he said quickly. What we felt was real. She shook her head. You don't get to decide that. Inside the hall, Sofia was still standing where Daniel had left her, arms crossed, eyes darting between the guests watching her and the stage she no longer belonged to. She felt exposed, foolish. And underneath the anger, something else began to rise, panic. She followed them outside. Are you just going to ignore me now? Sofia snapped, heels clicking against the stone floor. After everything? Maya turned, eyes narrowing. Everything? You mean the lie? Sofia scoffed. Please. He lied to both of us. That doesn't make us the same, Maya said quietly. Sofia's jaw tightened. Oh, and what exactly do you think you are? The saint? Daniel stepped between them. Stop. Both of you. Maya looked at him, hurt flashing across her face. You don't get to manage this. She turned back to Sofia. Did you know about me? Sofia hesitated. That was all the answer Maya needed. So you stayed, Maya said softly. Even when you thought he had nothing. Sofia lifted her chin defensively. I stayed until it was clear he wasn't going anywhere. And now that he's a billionaire? Maya asked. Silence. Sofia's voice softened. Daniel, you don't have to explain yourself to her. Maya laughed bitterly. Wow. She turned to Daniel one last time. You said intent mattered. Your intent was control. That's not fair, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. I was scared. So was I, she replied. I just didn't manipulate anyone because of it. Maya stepped away. Daniel reached for her arm. She pulled back. Don't, she said. Please don't make this harder. She walked out into the night, disappearing into the crowd. Daniel stood frozen. Sofia exhaled sharply and turned to him. You didn't have to chase her. He stared at the empty space where Maya had been. Yes, I did. Sofia stepped closer, placing a hand on his chest. You wanted to know who would stay when you were poor. I did. He looked down at her hand and gently moved it away. You stayed because you hoped I would become something else. She frowned. Isn't that what everyone wants? No, he said. Some people want you as you are. Sofia's expression hardened. So that's it? You're choosing her? He shook his head slowly. I'm choosing the truth. She laughed, but it sounded brittle. You think she's coming back after this? I don't know, he admitted. And if she doesn't? Sofia asked. You'll be alone. Daniel met her eyes. I already am. She stared at him for a long moment, then scoffed. Enjoy your honesty. She turned and walked away, heels sharp against the pavement, each step echoing finality. Daniel went home alone that night. The apartment felt smaller than ever. The silence was unbearable. He sat on the edge of the bed, suit still on, and for the first time since he was a young man with nothing, he cried. Days passed. The media spun the story. Some called him manipulative. Others praised his experiment. Daniel ignored all of it. He stopped going out. Stopped answering calls. Maya didn't respond to his messages. Weeks later, he returned the keys to the apartment and moved back into the penthouse. The space felt hollow. Too clean. Too quiet. One evening his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it for a long time before answering. Hello? Daniel, Maya said. His heart jumped. Maya. I didn't call to forgive you, she said calmly. I called because I needed closure. I understand, he said. They met at a small cafe, the same one where she had spilled coffee on his shoes months ago. He arrived early. When she walked in, he stood instinctively, then stopped himself. They sat. You hurt me, she said. But you also showed me something. What's that? That love without trust is just performance. He nodded. I know. She studied him. Are you still pretending? No, he said. I quit the company for 6 months. I'm living simply again. She raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I don't want to hide anymore. Silence stretched between them. I don't know if I can trust you again, Maya said. I know, he replied. She stood. I hope you learn from this. As she turned to leave, she paused. But I'm glad you told the truth in the end. She walked out. Daniel watched her go, unsure whether that was goodbye or something else. Daniel didn't see Maya again for 3 months. Not in the cafe. Not on the street. Not in the quiet corners of the city where they used to walk and talk about nothing and everything. Life went on around him, but he moved through it like a ghost, present but detached, wealthy but emptied. He did what he said he would do. He stepped away from the company. No announcements. No press releases. Just a quiet transfer of responsibility to people he trusted. He sold the penthouse. Moved into a modest apartment across town. Not because he needed to prove anything to anyone anymore, but because the lie had shown him something uncomfortable. He had been hiding from himself long before he hid from them. Sofia sent one final message a month after the gala. I hope it was worth it. He never replied. Some nights, he replayed every conversation with Maya in his head, wondering which moment had sealed the ending. The night she brought him soup. The time she defended him without knowing the truth. The way she trusted him without asking for proof. He realized something painful in the silence. The test had worked, but the timing hadn't. One rainy afternoon, Daniel found himself back at the bookstore where they had first met. He hadn't planned it. His feet just took him there. The bell above the door chimed softly as he stepped inside. And there she was. Maya stood near the back, flipping through a paperback, her hair tied back, glasses resting on her nose. She looked the same. And somehow, completely different. Daniel froze. She noticed him a second later. Their eyes met. Neither smiled. For a moment, neither moved. Then Maya closed the book and set it down. Hi, she said. Hi, he replied. They stood there awkwardly, surrounded by shelves of stories neither of them were ready to pick up. You look different, she said. So do you. She studied him. You look lighter. I feel heavier, he admitted. She nodded. That makes sense. They walked outside together, the rain having slowed to a mist. They didn't plan it. They just did what felt familiar. I heard you stepped away, Maya said. Yeah. Why? He didn't hesitate this time. Because I realized I don't want to be the kind of person who needs to test love. She stopped walking. He turned to face her. I was wrong, he continued. Not about people. About myself. I was so afraid of being used that I became someone I didn't recognize. Maya looked at him quietly. And now? Now I'm just trying to be honest. Even when it costs me. She exhaled slowly. That honesty came late. I know, he said. And I don't expect anything from you. Not forgiveness. Not another chance. They stood there, the city moving around them. I moved, Maya said suddenly. His heart sank. Oh. Not far, she added. Just closer to work. He nodded, forcing a smile. That's good. She looked at him carefully. I didn't leave because you were rich. I know. I didn't leave because you lied, she continued. I left because you decided you had the right to measure my love. The words hurt. They were meant to. You're right, he said. I did. Silence fell between them again. Maya broke it. I don't know if I can ever be with you. Daniel nodded. I understand. But, she added, I don't regret loving you. That was the moment everything changed. Not because she forgave him, but because she didn't erase what they had. They walked a little farther, then stopped at the corner where they used to part ways. This is where I get off, Maya said. Daniel smiled softly. Of course it is. She hesitated, then said, You taught me something too. What's that? That real love isn't about security, she said. But it's not about sacrifice either. It's about choice. She turned to leave, then paused. Maybe someday, she said, not looking back, we'll see who we are without tests. She walked away. Daniel didn't follow. He stood there, letting the rain dampen his jacket, feeling something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Months later, Daniel started something new. Not a company. Not an empire. A foundation. One that helped people rebuild after loss, financial, emotional, personal. He stayed out of the spotlight. Let others take credit. For the first time, his worth wasn't measured in numbers. Occasionally he saw Maya around the city. Sometimes they exchanged a nod. Sometimes a brief smile. They never crossed the line again. But the bitterness faded. One evening, as Daniel sat alone in his apartment, his phone buzzed. A message from Maya. I saw your foundation. He stared at the screen. It looks like something built without fear, she added. He typed slowly. It is. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. I'm glad you found your way, she finally sent. Daniel smiled. The test had ended. Not with a reunion. Not with a dramatic embrace. But with growth. And in the end that changed everything.